Hey everybody, Steven here, and today looking at the TUF VG27AQM5A. I haven't been on camera in a while for one of the monitor reviews, but this isn't going to be the full review. This is just going to be an unboxing and first impression video. This has some really interesting specs. I wanted to get just something out a little bit quicker, and then here in the next 4 or 5 weeks, when I've spent more time with this, I'll do the full review. And with that, I will have more of the tests that I do and showcasing different things like the in-panel menu and all the different settings that you'll find there. Here though, looking at the specs, so we have a 27-inch IPS panel monitor. This is a 1440p resolution. This has a 300 hertz refresh rate. That's the big draw and the interesting thing with this monitor, because we're getting these really high refresh rates now. So I want to see how that performs, especially with the 1 millisecond gray to gray response time that they're claiming here. But then they're even saying that this can go down to 0.3 milliseconds for that response time. Now we're getting into OLED territory. So I am very curious to see how this actually performs. With this, in terms of the color space, DCI-P3, 95% coverage. So when I do the full review, I will actually look at the Spider X color calibration tool and the results with that, and then we'll look at color gamut. So I'll add some more results to this. For the brightness typical, we're looking at 300 nits with this. I don't have any info on peak with that, so we'll see with the peak brightness what that may be. But the contrast ratio, 1300 to 1. Now typically when you look at an IPS, I've normally seen 1000 or 1200 to 1. This is a little bit higher. We have that 1300 to 1, and with that, that's a trade out that you find with VA compared to the IPS. VA has a higher contrast ratio. Usually you're looking at 4000 to 1, but the response time is slower, so you're going to notice a lot more ghosting. So here you're not going to have the higher contrast ratio, but it is much faster, less ghosting. And then looking at HDR, it does support HDR 10. I don't know if that is going to be true 10-bit color or if that's just going to be the 8-bit plus FRC. With that though, unless you're working with something like Premiere Pro or Photoshop where you need like true 10-bit color, the 8-bit plus FRC for gaming, you're not really going to notice any visual difference there. We do have flicker-free technology, and then just some of the stuff that you would find in the menu. So you're going to have 4 different modes for color temperature. You're going to have variable refresh rate. They do have the extreme low motion blur sync mode with this, as well as just extreme low motion blur. You're going to get shadow boost. You do have the display widget center app that you can connect with this. That has a ton of different settings that you can adjust in it. A lot of the stuff that you're just going to find in the in-panel menu. Sometimes there's stuff that you won't find there though, which is the interesting part, where you can adjust a couple different settings that you're not going to get just with the normal in-panel menu. We have the AI assistant technology here. Dynamic crosshair, that's going to be one of those, and then we're going to have the dynamic shadow boost. This does come with 2 2-watt speakers. I will do a sound test for that in this video. For ports, we're going to get DP 1.4, we're going to get 2 HDMI 2.1, so we only have the 1 DP port there though, and then a Type-C service port, and then a headphone jack, and then we have the 300 hertz. For mechanical here, we're going to get tilt, swivel, height adjustment. You can VESA mount this with a 100mm by 100mm pattern. So tilt, it's saying 20 degrees forwards, 5 degrees back. Swivel is 20 degrees in either direction. And I'm sorry, no height adjustment here. That is interesting. So this is going to be locked in place. So there's the specs. Let's get this thing unloaded though, and all set up. Okay, so we have the base here. We're gonna have the 2 screws already in there. I like when that is the case. This looks like it just actually clicks into place. So kind of offset, yep. And then you click it this way, and then you can screw this down. It is lower in just the overall height, so we're not gonna get that height adjustment, and that's where that VESA is definitely gonna come in handy if you need more height adjustment out of that. You can see there's the plate here that you could take this off and then do the VESA mounting. This is just actually going to click onto the bottom there. And it looks like I should have some screws for that. So we have 4 screws. I haven't had a screw in a monitor arm to a monitor in a minute. Okay, so with this, earlier I was thinking it was a USB-A. No, it is just the one USB-C that is just the service port, and that's a 3.2 gen USB-C on this. So you don't have any extension ports or anything like that on this monitor, which is usually the case with more mid or entry tier monitors. It's crazy the specs though you're getting on those monitors, like this one where you're getting 300 hertz on this, still at 1440p. So this is it. All right, so we're supposed to get swivel. There we go. So we have that 20 degrees in either direction. Tilt the 20. So, okay, so it'll be 5 degrees forwards, 20 degrees backwards on this. On the right-hand side, if you're looking directly at the monitor, we're going to have our menu buttons going to kind of what you see with the XG series here, which would most likely be with the TUF as well, which is your radial dial, and then you have your 4 menu buttons here. Essentially, the radial dial here is most likely going to be like a click in, and then it'll give you options, and you can navigate and essentially enable those options just with this one button. And then we'll have kind of like some quick access preset buttons here, and then your power on and off, and certain things like changing the input, things like that will be right here. And then inside of the box, you're going to get a DP cable, your power cable, your user manual, and then your warranty information. So now it is time to get this thing set up, use it for a couple days, and just see how it performs, showcase a handful of different things with this as well. And then again, in the next 4 maybe to 6 weeks, I'll have the final review out. But let's go ahead and get this thing plugged in and let's play some games. So now that I've used this for about the last week, I think the big question here is going to be, how does the 300 hertz perform? And I'm happy to say that it performs really, really well. This thing is smooth. There is very minimal ghosting. It's not quite OLED levels, but this is still extremely good. I'm very happy to say that I'm not seeing anything on the performance side where it's a very glaring issue. It just does very well here. I'm curious to see how this is going to perform when I do my on-screen response time testing tool and the results that I'm going to get with that. But visually, when I'm running the UFO test, there is very minimal ghosting, so I could see this being close to the 1 millisecond gray to gray response time. But you can enable overdrive with this. It has 5 levels. This is at 3 by default, and as you go up to 5, you do see some inverse ghosting. So I'm assuming at level 5, that's where we see the claim of the 0.3 milliseconds gray to gray response time, but it's going to come at a cost. When I do the final review and I have the test results, I'll have more information on that. But just out of the box, how does it look? How does it perform? Really good. Now, just like my regular monitor reviews, I'm going to showcase a wide variety of gameplay footage. I'll have more for the final review, especially when it comes to consoles, but just with the PlayStation 5, what can you do here? Here you're going to get actual upscale to 4K. You will get 1440p and 1080p. You get variable refresh rate, HDR, and then we can go to that 120 hertz across the board of all those resolutions. Here we have confirmation. You can do the variable refresh rate. You can also apply it to unsupported games. You can do the 120 hertz. And then we do have the auto low latency mode. When I go to the final review, then I'm going to showcase what you can do with the Xbox Series X and the Nintendo Switch 2. Another thing that I'll cover and talk about more in the final review is going to be the extreme low motion blur, which does a really good job for consoles, specifically when you're perhaps not getting the same visual fidelity. You're starting to notice more ghosting when it comes to your gaming because of the limitation with the hardware. You can also apply this to PC. But if you're getting this monitor, I'm assuming you're going to have a pretty beefy GPU so you can take full advantage of the 300 Hertz. Now, performance is going to be the #1 thing that matters when it comes to a monitor like this. But if the visuals aren't really good, it is one of those things where I may not consider buying that monitor, because although the performance is really good, it just doesn't look good overall. Here, you don't have to worry about that. We have this really nice IPS panel, and in the panel menu, I'm surprised they're giving you as many options as they are. Of course, like I mentioned, there aren't as many options as you would find with the XG series or the PG series monitors. But here you have all the same picture presets. You're going to get the shadow boost. You have the extreme low motion blur. You have a lot of options to tailor not only the performance, but also the picture itself to your liking. Now, although we do have all of these same picture presets that we find on these other ROG monitors, they are not calibrated nearly as good as those other monitors. So you're going to need to spend a little bit of time both in the image tab in the panel menu here, but also potentially with your NVIDIA or AMD control panel to really hone in the visuals with this. If you do that though, this thing looks really, really awesome. Just a couple other things I want to showcase. We have the image tab here. I will actually showcase this in the final review in terms of some of these settings, like the picture presets and things like that, and what that will visually look like. I didn't really mess with HDR too much here. I did use it for the console gaming. It looks really nice there, but not really for PC gaming. And then last, we have the color tab. We have display color space, color temperature, saturation. Again, these options that we find on the XG and PG series monitors, a lot of them they've brought over to this TUF monitor, and TUF is more of their more affordable portion of the brand, but they still brought over a lot of features here, which is awesome. Another thing to mention is the fact that all ASUS monitors come with a 3-year warranty. A lot of times for these more mid-tier monitors, you may find they only have a 1-year warranty. No. Across the board, for all ASUS monitors, you get a 3-year warranty. So I think the visuals that you can get out of this panel, the vibrancy, the overall look is really good. Yeah, you may need to spend a little bit of time calibrating this to your liking, but most of the time when I'm looking at a monitor that is kind of in this mid-tier space, that's usually the case. Here they give you plenty of options to do that. You may potentially need to use the NVIDIA or AMD control panel to adjust some things, but I think for most people you can get away with just adjusting things inside of the panel menu, and you don't have to touch anything in the NVIDIA or AMD control panel. So if you plan on playing first-person shooters and you're really concerned about the 300 Hertz and the response time, you're good. This thing is really, really good on the performance side. And then if you're playing other games, role-playing games, action-adventure, racing games, sim games, anything like that, and the 300 Hertz is nice to have potentially with that, but you really want to make sure that the visuals look good because they're just a little bit slower paced. You're covered there as well. So performance and visuals, they get a big thumbs up from me. Of course, I'm going to spend more time testing all of this, but I don't think anything's going to change between now and the final review. I'm just going to have more information to stack on this with my tests that I can showcase to everybody that just says, yeah, the performance here is really good and the visuals are really good. And last here, for the things that I've seen that I really, really like, we have the speakers. Here, they're two 2-watt speakers, so in terms of like the overall quality, it's not going to have as much bass as you may like. It's kind of a little bit flat. There's certain applications where you can adjust the EQ settings to get a little bit more out of this, or sometimes inside of a game menu you can do that. But here, I want to go ahead and do a quick sound test for these so you can hear what these sound like. I'm going to have the camera roughly 3 to 4 feet away from this. Keep in mind, this will sound a little bit better in person, and the only adjustments in post that I'm going to do are going to be to the overall gain, because I want to make sure that this sounds very similar to how it sounds when you're in the room. Now, in terms of outright negatives or just glaring issues that I've seen with this monitor, I'm happy to report that I haven't, but I've only used this for a little over a week. I'm going to spend the next month or so with this, and during that time period, if anything pops up, I will cover that in the final review. In terms of gray area things though, which are things you may or may not care about, here you don't have the height adjustment. I've noticed in this mid-tier space, for whatever reason, if you're given one thing, you may not get the other thing. So when it comes to mechanical adjustments, if a monitor has the height adjustment, it may lack a swivel or a pivot, or vice versa. Sometimes, like in this instance, you're going to get that swivel, but then you don't get the height adjustment with this. And really, those things I do consider to be extras. If a monitor in this space has the height adjustment, the swivel, the pivot, those are kind of extras. Usually you may just find tilt. Some of the other extras here that this doesn't have, which I usually don't expect. It's always awesome if a monitor does have it, but we don't find it here. You don't get extra USB ports, and you don't have any RGB lighting on this. It's just the black molding, which I think is fine because most of the time the lights are on the back and you can't really see them anyways. And so that's going to be it for the gray area things for right now. Couple last minute things I want to cover. Text quality. Here you're dealing with 1440p at 27 inches. I think the text looks pretty decent. If you were to stretch that out to 32 inches and you made this monitor bigger, that's usually where you start to see a lot of pixelation because the pixels per inch has gone down. And so it just doesn't quite look as well. Here, I think it looks decent. It's not going to look the same as like a 4K monitor at the same size because you're going to increase the pixel density, but it is still good enough that if you're doing anything in a lot of text-based applications, you're not going to have an issue. And then last here, we have the IPS panel glow. All IPS panel monitors have it. Here it is decently minimal. It isn't as pronounced as I've seen with some other IPS panels. In fact, I would say it's probably the least amount of IPS panel glow that I've seen with an IPS panel. So here I do think that is a really good thing for anybody that plays darker games that maybe was concerned that they would have a ton of IPS panel glow. Is it still here? Yes, but it's not as bad as some other monitors that are out on the market. So that's going to wrap this video up. I will have a link for this in the description if you want to pick this up. If you have any questions that you want me to cover in the final review, let me know down below in the comment section. I'm comfortable enough saying that if you don't want to wait for that review, this is a really good find. This is a really good buy, especially with this coming up on Amazon Prime Day and Black Friday deals and things like that. This holiday season, you may be able to find this for an even cheaper price point, which, speaking of the price, I don't mention that usually very early on in the video, but here this is $299. I think that is a solid price point for the performance that they're giving you with this, but you may find it on sale for even cheaper if you wait another month or two, and you could get an even better deal. So that's going to wrap this video up. If you like the video, hit the like button for me as it helps the channel out. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.